Josh Dubow tweeted this on Monday. 3 years ago today, the Raiders signed Derek Carr to a 5-year, $125 million extension. Since then, the Raiders are 28th in the league in scoring and are tied with Washington and Tampa for the 25th best record, 17-31. Now, his replies, like always when Josh tweets these types of numbers, is just an argument about talent surrounding multiple offensive coordinators, head coaches, awful defenses. All that's true.
Wide receiver burns off his feet.
You trade off your co-captain, I guess we'd call Khalil Mack. Like, that's how they were viewed. They went, Amari Cooper gone. I mean,
no, just you trade off the best player on your team.
That's the other way to put it. The better way to put it. So there's a lot of ways to look at it.
It is a pretty glaring tweet. I mean, you just read it for what it is in a vacuum. It's pretty crazy.
And you and I, we talk about this a lot. This is not an opinion. There is still time for him because he's the quarterback of this team, and he's not getting beat out by Marcus Mariota, whether they had a full OTA camp or not. He's a quarterback, so he's got time. But I do think it's just an example. When you get paid, there is only going to be one stat that matters. Like, whatever Carson Wentz does in his career, now this is a different conversation, but whatever Carson does in his career, if he doesn't win a Super Bowl, guess what? Nick Foles won a Super Bowl. He didn't. Period. Whatever. Now, that's we're not talking about Super Bowl here. We're just talking about be better than you've been. There are a lot of reasons the Raiders haven't been good. But once you pay somebody $125 million, it's the 17-31 is really all it gets argued about.
If the franchise could get a do-over, now they had two different coaches, different GMs, would they have signed Khalil Mack first and Derek second? Or do you think Gruden's glad the way it played out? Because I guess they would have signed him before Gruden would have showed up.
Like, it's hard, right? It's easy to say, yeah, now. The problem with that is you do just pay your quarterback, and there's an argument to be made. We're still waiting. Maybe they can salvage based on the picks they got and the players they drafted to some degree to the Khalil thing. Like, if Derek this year has a year where you go, okay, he is the quarterback of the Giants. Like, he is the quarterback now for a few years. Like, he's the quarterback. Then that's what you would have done.
I think.
Now, if you ask most GMs right now, who would they rather?
Yeah, 32 GMs would take Khalil Mack. I think here's the issue. They signed him after he broke his ankle, and he's never quite been the same. Because that guy we saw in 2016, whether you like the Raiders, whether you hate the Raiders, we all admit he was a top 5 quarterback by every metric, right? The eye test, the PFFs of the world, no one was arguing like it was fluky. Like, we all watched it. We've all seen enough football. He had a fantastic season, and even the game that he got hurt, I remember was the Colts game. They were starting to blow him out. He had thrown 3 touchdowns in that game. The next week was going to be for the Broncos to get the 2 seed. It was like, gee, is this really happening? And it was weird because their team, looking back, they had one good defensive player in Khalil, and they were just scoring a ton of points. The next couple years, he wasn't the same.
Musgrave leaves, or they get rid of
Musgrave leaves, and he wanted that, right? He wanted Todd Downing, and that was a disaster. But to me, it's more just he has some moments where he throws the ball in the ground on a 4th down, throws the ball away on a 4th down, where it just sees plays where he just gives up on. His talent hasn't changed, right? He's still athletic enough to move around back there. He's got a big arm. That's what's weird about talking about him. He gets compared, I think, sometimes to Alex. Part of the reason Alex can't throw the ball downfield is because he literally can't really throw the ball down the field. Like Derek, if you just went to a practice and watched him take 5-step drop and just say, hey, fling this 50 yards to Henry Ruggs, that is not going to be a problem for Derek, right?
Right.
And that's where I think people find themselves in this conundrum. And I had a buddy on the Raider staff tell me one time, a couple years ago, the hard part with Derek is in practice when it's kind of 80% bullets and he knows he can't be hit. He's throwing these seeds. You're like, God, we got this talented quarterback. And we all know, and if you're listening to a Raider fan, you just watch some of the games and he just leaves a little be desired. Now, he had moments last year, but there were still some of the, that Green Bay game where he sticks the ball out and then it snowballs. Now, looking back, Green Bay was 13-3 team, right? Green Bay was way better than the Raiders. The Raiders shouldn't win that game in Green Bay. But I think the counter is Well, the fucking Raiders were about to take the lead, and they were playing really well, and that's part of, like, just being a good quarterback. Sometimes you elevate your team a game you shouldn't win, even when that other team's not playing bad. And Derek still has some of those where, listen, we've both known Derek for over a decade, seen him play, talking about him since high school. And the guy that we were really bullish on, it's hard for me to still be that bullish on now, though I'm not foolish enough to think, like, he's not an overachiever in the sense of his talent is NFL level. Yeah. And his talent is, like, when he's on, he can sling the ball around.
And that's the other, it's not all a projection. Sorry to jump on you there, but it's not all a projection. We've seen it, too. That's the other part of this.
I just don't. Like, I think most people around the league would be like, yeah, he's an overpaid player, right? Most fans, like, follow the NFL would say Derek's an overpaid player.
Well, he's also a quarterback that's been in one place, right? So at the end of this year, he will have made $105 million of that contract.
It's a lot of cash, guy.
So the question is, after this year, his dead cap number is $2.5 million.
But there's a decent chance, right? He goes 9-7, has a similar statistical year to last year. Let's say they get to the playoffs, lose a first-round game. He's still their quarterback next year.
Yeah,
there's a decent chance he plays out this.
Which is what most people.
Is there a good chance he plays out the entire contract? The entire contract for the Raiders? I'm starting to think like that's might be 50% plus, just because it's hard. They're not going to be like 3 wins.
Yes, I would say.
Who do they get, guy?
I would say, do you think John Gruden
is going to go 4 or 5 years without having to feel like he's got a chance
without changing a quarterback? Yeah, is he really going to go that long? Without changing, if he feels like he needs a better quarterback, I don't think he'll just default. I think he'll try something different or draft a guy in the first round or make some moves, whatever. But yeah, I don't think it's inevitable that Derek's not the quarterback of the Raiders in 2021. Again, part of that is because, like you just described, there's a scenario where they're better this year and he's good enough to come back without being MVP level guy that we saw that we thought we were about to see, right?
It feels like
part of this is their defense better? I know.
Lots out of his control. He's got to play well this year.
Do they win more football games this year?
Do you think I think for him to be viewed as like this contract was even somewhat worth it, they got to make the playoffs. Because if I tell you the Raiders make the playoffs, like their defense hasn't changed that much. They added a couple linebackers. They're going to be better on defense. But Khalil Mack and Aaron Donald didn't show up.
If you tell me they made the playoffs this year, then we're not even having this discussion in the offseason.
Well, yeah, you tell me
I don't
they
even
made
need
the
to know
playoffs.
anybody's numbers.
If I tell you they make the playoffs, I would guess Derek threw 27 to 30 touchdowns, had 65 to 67%, had single-digit picks.
You have to just win some big games, right, on the road.
Yeah, like just being talked about very favorably and being talked about like, I don't know if he'd win the comeback player of the year because you'd look at his actually stats last year were good, right? Like part of why Tannehill wins the comeback player of the year, like he didn't play. Derek was, I think, threw 25 touchdowns last year.
Who wins? I thought comeback player usually is like a hurt guy.
It's usually an injury or a guy that fallen on hard times. But my point is people would be impressed. He'd be like, God, did Derek have a top 10 season? He would get a lot of credit.
Yeah, it's like, Eric Berry won it, Keenan Allen.
Yeah. So it's usually like ACL cancer or something. Big effing deal.
I'd forgotten John Luck won it in 2018.
He's not going to, because he missed all those games.
Yeah.
He's not going to win the comeback player of the year because he won't even qualify for it because he did play all 16 games last year. But I think it's fair to say it's like, I don't need 2016 again, but I need a year where it goes, yeah, I feel good about having this guy as my starting quarterback on a team where I'm trying to compete with Patrick Mahomes' division.
Yeah, what you'd like is to not be having this debate every offseason, right? And there are arguments for and there are arguments against. You just want to not be doing this every offseason.
Yeah. Do you believe – I also think you can say what you want about Mariota and the value. If they were 100% sold on Derek, are they spending $7.5, $8 million on a backup quarterback? Even if they go, well, he was our top guy on our board 4 to 5 years ago. I don't know.
I mean, I guess you have to say no. You have to say no just based every dollar counts to the NFL. But I do think there's something to these guys just liked Mariota. Maybe you can use him as and we'll see. Like if they're using him if they're just using him sometimes as not, I don't want to use the word gimmick, but right, if they've got special packages for him, that kind of thing, maybe they just think, hey, we're getting a backup quarterback, but we're also paying for a guy that we can use in a unique way. And so he's a $6 million backup and a $2 million kind of little Swiss Army knife tool we can use, and so that's how we justify it.
Wouldn't you also argue too that they probably look at it? Well, Derek cost $22 million. Factor in Marcus, we're still under $30 million for our quarterback room, and we got 2 guys that can start.
Did they sign him? I'm trying to remember. Did they sign him after a lot of guys had been signed near the end, or was that at the like had a lot of money been spent and you kind of knew who you were signing on defense?
I thought it was relatively in the first couple of days.
Yeah.
Again, that like he just got highest paid backup market. Like who was going to pay him?
That usually highest paid guy doesn't get it last; he gets it first.
Yeah.
I guess not necessarily.
I feel pretty confident that Marcus would have had several offers around the league with the Andy Reid types. Maybe not them, their contract situation, but just Howie Roseman probably offering a $3 or $4 million. Once you went to 7, like you said, every dollar counts. Like the difference between $4 million and $7.5 million is $3.5 million. Well, that $3.5 million can buy you like a starting guard.
Right. That's why so free agency started on March 18th. He got signed on March 23rd. So he got signed the first week.
So wouldn't you say, I would imagine by that first couple of days, he had several solid offers?
Yeah.
And the Raiders, part of why I would imagine if Mack got on the phone with us and was telling us the truth, part of the reason we had to give him 7.5 because he could have gone to like several playoff teams for 5, or 4. Because I would feel pretty good as a GM taking a flyer on that guy for $3 or $4 million.
For sure.
Do I love it for 7.5?
No, I mean
that's where Mack and Gruden say, well, he was our number 1 quarterback. Where some guys might say he wasn't our number 1 quarterback.
Now, maybe they would argue with us on this. I don't think he's good enough. Like, to me, I'd feel better about it if you thought, God, I think he can be good enough to beat Derek out, and then we got an $8 million starter. Now, then you're paying $22 for your backup. But the point being, I don't think he's good enough to beat Derek out. Not that there's a competition per se. I don't think he's winning you more games as your starting quarterback. But maybe they would say, well, let's see. Maybe we get him with Gruden. Maybe he is. Maybe he can become a starter in this league again on a good, for a good team.
It's never a bad idea if you have the financial flexibility to take a flyer on a guy like Marcus Mariota because the chance of him being good and the chance of like your 6th-round pick, that is ideal, right? Most teams would go, I would love to have a backup that I feel good about making $600,000 instead of a backup that I feel good about making $8 million, right? If you could choose the two, you'd be like, well, I'd rather use the $7 million to go get myself a starting tight end.
Yeah. The question is, do you feel like if you have to win 4 games, your $2 million backup can't do that for you? Because in a year where 9-7, you go, that might. I'm willing to pay $6 extra million because I think this guy is marginally better than my other options.
And that's the pushback on Mariota. Last year, you'd say he was pretty terrible.
Yeah.
And I think that's if you were in the pro Mariota camp, you're just simply saying. He had lost his confidence. He had fallen on hard times. We've seen better versions. We think we can get that confidence back. And I think sometimes to get confidence back, I've never been an NFL player, but just like...
But you're an amateur golfer.
Yeah, think about anything you do in life, though. When you can get your confidence back when you're flying under the radar a little bit, like if I just go bang some balls for the next 2 weeks over the shit I need to work on, I'm going to feel a lot... Or if I just had a money game tomorrow, I'd be pretty nervous because I don't have much confidence in my golf game right now. I'd be going out without confidence. But if I got 2 weeks or a month to just get my mind right, I'm going to feel more confident. Just like Marcus Mariota, you get to fly under the radar a little bit. You can't convince me. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if you tell me Marcus Mariota resurrects his career through this little process the next couple years and then becomes a 5-year starting quarterback for someone else, I wouldn't tell you you're crazy. We've seen it happen countless times. Because he was the 2nd overall pick. And he clearly is an NFL player, right? It's not like he's not skilled enough. Or now there are injury question marks. Maybe 5 strong. Let's say 3-year starter for someone. He's won a playoff game.
Yeah.
Where didn't you rewatch it and tell me it was a little weird when you rewatched it?
Yeah. Remember he has the ball that gets deflected back to him and he dives in the end zone and scores.
It wasn't one of those. Remember,
to me, there's a big difference.
Remember the Luck Alex Smith game
where
they were both just throwing BBs back and forth, and it ended. They had 9 touchdowns combined. It did not look like that.
No, it didn't.
Because the Chiefs were up 21-7. Kelsey gets concussed, and then it's never the same. But like you say, anytime that you get a touchdown on a ball that's batted that lands back into your hands, I think you got a red flag. To quote unquote, he's won a playoff game.
Do you think Derek Carr is somebody's starter 5 years from now? I do. Gut reaction.
I would not be. I would lean 51% yes, but I'm not going 80%. Okay. I think he has a chance to reestablish himself this year to kind of just quiet everything.
Yeah, I agree.